these sessions are going to allow you to be more proactive and get the tools you need to be able to be an effective leader and also really manage your organization.
So are we seeing a diverse amount of people in the C-suite jobs and the CEO role?
So you have to be innovative. That's another thing that many companies are missing because we're stuck in the way we do things, the way that has worked for us.
Welcome to another leadership. I should say, Lord, geez, I messed that up. Launch, leverage, and lead. See, even I mess up sometimes. Catch a player slipping. But anyway, welcome to another Saturday Live, Launch, Leverage, and Lead. I got my fine crew in the building. Aisha, how's it going today?
Good. I'm feeling good, feeling great. Finally, like back in some kind of like normal space. So I'm feeling good, feeling great.
Yeah. I feel that. Tyrus, what it's looking like today?
Hey, man, it's all good. Playing around with this new mic setup, trying to get it from being this way across all the screens to in front of me. And you wouldn't believe that how much effort it takes to set this stuff up just to make it look okay and sound okay. It's crazy, but it's all good. First world problems.
Nah, I tell you what, we should do something on that one day. Just showing people like, if we going live, like this is what it takes to even get the setup. Yeah. Like, I think some people just think like, oh man, they got the stuff and it just is what it is. Like, what's your background look like? Like, what's your mic looking like? You know what I'm saying? You doing the headphone, boy? Or you actually got a mic? Like,
now, Corey, before you go anywhere else, that's something that, because I'm not a podcasting guru, but what I have noticed is there are some people who podcast, they got a mic, but they don't have no headphones on. And so I always read that when you don't wear the headphones, you can have the echo and you can hear and the echo picks up. But some people, you don't hear no echo. So I'm like, okay, how do they hear what's coming from whoever they're speaking to and prevent the echo? So if you're listening and you had an answer to that question, drop it in the comments. I would love to know. Because sometimes
well, you know what? Like the way mine is set up right now, my headphones are for me to hear myself. Yeah. And then the sound is coming from the computer. So I like to hear myself. It might be a thing just from performing and singing, but I like to hear myself to make sure I sound good. And then it just comes from here, but that's how it works over here.
Yeah, we're going to do a whole launch, leverage, and lead on how to set the podcast up correctly. Bring one of those guests that this is all they do and get those tips.
Nah, but speaking of setting up correctly and hearing yourself, we got some leadership in the news for y'all, and I think it's very interesting. But I'm gonna let Aisha take it away. I'm gonna just give y'all a little hint before she gets into it. It has something to do with our former commander-in-chief. Is that what you call him? Yes. The former commander-in-chief, and how words can get turned into something else.
Yeah, man. So I was, so I checked out the impeachment trial, and this has nothing to do with politics, but I think you can learn so many leadership lessons from watching it. Because as I was watching it, it just came to me. If your words and your actions were on trial, what would you be found guilty of? And it was so interesting how they laid out pieces of speeches and actions, pieces of speeches, actions, behaviors, and connecting everything. And I was just like, wow, not only can social media and of course the things we say that's documented can be used against us, right? Or can be used to create a case, depending on what side of the case it is. But it really made me reflect on, as a leader, when you think about your actions and behaviors, what does it say that you're guilty of? And I think some leaders, they live in this space where, again, probably growing up and us growing up where we grow up, it was about like, do as I say, not as I do. But what you're really seeing is like, man, like we're living in a time where accountability is super important. And you have to really ensure that the way you move and the way you act and the things you say, you really, really have to be mindful of it. So I want to ask you guys, like, have you guys ever found yourself in a situation where it was like, listen, we need to hold somebody accountable, and now you're going back to emails, you're going back to like really trying to find information and data to show that no, this person is on this side of it, or even on the other side where you have to defend yourself and you're like, no, what they're saying is false, and here is the proof. And do you feel like we live in an age now where it's easier to monitor that, or are we living in a time now where when it comes to leadership and us being in these roles that things can be misconstrued easily, or people are more sensitive when it comes to leadership? How do you handle leadership in this age? I just threw a bunch of questions at y'all, so whatever one y'all decipher from there. What are your thoughts on that? What you think about that, Tyrus?
So it's absolutely a fact that in this day and time, people are more sensitive. And I'm not sure if it's necessarily that they're more sensitive. I think that we finally have a voice to be able to say what we feel. In the past, like you said, it was do as I say. I'm going to lead with the iron fist. I'm going to say whatever I want to say to you. And you need this job or you need this position. So you got to do what I tell you to do. And then the outlets weren't there for people to have their concerns addressed. Now, I think that people can do that. They may go a little overboard with some stuff. But having policies, procedures, standards, core values, all of those in a company, now you can match what's being said versus the standard. And does it have merit? Is what this individual bringing up, is it really something? And does it stand for what we stand for? And so I think as leaders, we have to be careful with our words. We have to understand that there are different people in different areas that may feel differently about certain things. And what you may say to me may not hurt my feelings, but it may hurt somebody else's feelings based on how it came off. So I think, again, the other question that you asked, is it easier to track? I believe so, because we have email, we have text, and people will bring that stuff up, screenshot everything. They keep it all and they have the proof. And I think that's necessary, because if one individual speaks against another, I think it's necessary to have the proof to back it up so we can really dive in and say, okay, X person said this, you took it this way, you have evidence, let it stack up against our corporate policies, procedures, standards, core values, and then let's hash it out and see what corrections need to be made. Now, if that individual introduced something that, hey, yeah, you took that wrong, then we have a standard at least to go through the process and say, okay, let's just be careful. I see in certain, like I'm in a class right now in behavior economics where in a discussion board, they said don't use all caps, a lot of emojis, or humor because it can be misconstrued. It doesn't come across the same way in email, text that it may be in words when you can see their face. So just keeping all those things in mind. And, our former commander-in-chief said a lot of things. I mean, he spoke what he felt for his audience, and that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. And he just never took ownership of that when he should have.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of times is what we really mean to say doesn't come out correctly. And to be honest with you, I know there's a whole team for like the White House, and they write speeches and all that stuff for him and take a look at what he's saying. I don't know if that necessarily went on during that tenure of his, because he, you can tell when things were written for people and they come out very formal, and he basically was just like, it is what it is. This is what I have to say. But we do live in an age where, like you said, Tyrus, like you can track all of it. Like, are you sending text messages? Because a lot of people prefer text messages nowadays. Are you sending it through WebEx? Are you sending it through, whatever it might be that you're communicating on between your company? And they can save that type of stuff. The other thing for me is understanding the relationship built by people, pretty much. So when things start to get misconstrued, and like you said, Tyrus, I think, and I don't quote me on a number, but I think it's somewhere like 90% of communication happens within the face and body language. Yep. And so if you're across from people, or you read a tabloid, or you read, how many times have you read the news? And I'm not saying this to defend him, but how many times have you read the news or you read an article and it's like, this is what's happening right now. Can you believe this person just said this? But in the complete context of it, you were like, oh, that's not what they meant by that. But they cherry picked that piece out and said, oh, this is what needs to be said. Now, we know, and I'm gonna just be straightforward and say we know that a lot of things that have been said, we were like, wait, what? But that's neither here nor there. But understand that the relationship that you build with people, and for you business owners, your tribe, your group of people who's following you, the people who really rock with you, are they gonna misconstrue what you're saying? And then especially in cancel culture, are they just gonna cancel you because you decided to say something off the wall? Are they just gonna cancel you because you decided to state your opinion on a fact, or say, hey, no, this is my stance on a particular situation? I'll even tell y'all, I was having a conversation yesterday, I think it was, because the Texas senator and the governor is under fire right now because one of them was in Ted Cruz was in Mexico while we were getting all this snow and this ice. And now people are like, oh, we need to hold him accountable. And so for me, I said, you know what? Optically, that doesn't look good. But my stance on it is that man's phone rings the same probably in Mexico than it does in Texas. So what exactly needs to happen? But what you see in the news is Ted Cruz got up out of Texas while it was snowing. Yeah. But in reality, we have to step back and think, okay, what could this person have done? Should they just have gone through it just to say they went through it? I mean, I think if a lot of people's families had the means to get to Mexico, in that time frame, they probably would have. But it doesn't change the fact that certain people will feel a certain way, and you have to watch how you move. Like even on here, people can take what we're saying, take a snippet out of it and be like, oh, Corey said this crazy stuff on his podcast. And then people run with it. So I do believe that it comes down to the relationships that you build, them people really knowing who you are. It's just the hard part of it is people will not. All people don't know who you are internally. They don't know what you stand for and whatnot. So you have to try to convey that to people. And I think in this case, we knew there was a clear divide. This is almost one of the first presidencies that I seen you either or for him or against him. I didn't really see anybody that was just like, he's all right. It doesn't really matter to me. So you're going to have an entire side of people that say, nah, whatever you saying, I'm either going to twist it, and to be honest with you, they didn't really need to do much twisting, but they were just like, I'm just going to put it out there, and then the people do what they want with it. So a lot of that boils down to the relationship that you build with your people.
Yeah, and I think that, you have to really be mindful. I mean, it's just the reality. When you are in a leadership role, you're just looked at a lot differently. I mean, you hit on a good point. The first thing I thought about, again, we are in a time where like people are looking for empathy and understanding. But again, if you did have the means to potentially say, there's a snowstorm about to hit, we're going to lose power, we can get on a private jet and fly somewhere else, a lot of people would. And again, it's not saying it's wrong or right, but again, when you're in a leadership role and when people are looking for you, they're looking at a certain level of empathy. So maybe if it was managed a little differently, okay, before he went to Mexico, he went to the food bank and he went and toured the place and did some additional things, then would it look differently? But we've seen that, with a lot of presidencies where they go take vacations and they're saying, oh my goodness, that's taxpayer dollars, and how, this leader is out here, gallivanting in Mexico or wherever, and they should be focused on the people. But then when do we have a level of empathy and understanding where leaders need to also be human, need to take breaks, need to like decompress? And I think sometimes we forget that. So it's like, as a leader, I had this conversation with my boss about a couple years ago where I had a moment and I had to ask, I was just like, she was like, you're being watched, you're a leader, you have to show up this way. And I was just like, wow, it's just an awakening that as a leader, you have to, I won't say pretty much like you just have to always show up on, and you can't have a bad day, because unfortunately you could potentially be looked like, or someone can assume that you don't care or you're not, within. It's just like you have this superhero cape on at all times, where leaders are human too. So it's like finding that balance of, can you truly be authentically you? But in reality, it seems like the answer is no, because the masses are going to think or assume that you don't care. And, there's an expectation of leadership that a lot of people have to navigate. So it's a tough role. I tell leaders all the time, or people that go into business. And, we've seen the conversations where someone wanted to start a business and they were like, yeah, they want me to do this leadership role, but I don't want to take it. But you want to be in business? Like how? It comes with business. So if you don't want to do the practice in your 9 to 5, You want to do the practice when you're a full-time entrepreneur, when it's only you and your income. That is the worst time to do it. So it's just finding that, striking that balance. So, a lot of little nuggets that I took away from just watching it, and just seeing what's going on in the world when you look at leaders and how we truly learn how to balance what the people say, who we truly are, and having to show up a certain way, so things aren't misconstrued.
Yeah. And before we transition into our topic for the day, the biggest thing I can tell people is a lot of times, how about in front of it? And don't be afraid, in this situation. Look, yeah, people of Texas, I am in Mexico right now. But guess what? I'm doing XYZ to make sure that y'all are being taken care of from Mexico. I got power. I got internet. My stuff's not cutting off. So, yes, I'm still here with you. I might be somewhere else. It just, again, leadership is influence, and a lot of it is optics. So when somebody says, "Oh, you slid under the radar and went on ahead and headed out to Mexico," they're like, maybe you didn't want to ride it out with us. Or, maybe there were things that we didn't know. That someone mentioned to me that the president had sent us generators to Texas. I never heard anything about it. So those are things that, to keep in consideration as you're building your brand, building your leadership skills. Like, don't be afraid to hop out in front of it to say, because we're not telling you don't fly to Mexico, don't go here, don't go there, don't say this or that, but hop out in front and be like, you know what? Yeah, I am here. However, this is what I'm doing to support you still. But I think that brings us to a perfect transition of an individual who did hop out in front. I think he's, as far as African Americans go and money is involved, I think he is in the most front. But today we're talking about Robert F. Smith. And so those of you who don't know about Robert F. Smith, you probably heard that he was going to pay for, or did pay for, an entire graduating class, I believe, at Morehouse, an entire graduating class's tuition, like off the books now. But just to give you a little bit of background about him. So he's the founder, chairman, and CEO of Vista Equity Partners. He directs their investment strategy and decisions, their investor relations. And check this out. So he manages, or I should say they manage under Vista Equity, $73 billion. And he oversees a portfolio of more than 65 enterprise software, data, and technology-enabled companies. Those companies employ over 70,000 people worldwide. And he supervised, it says that himself, he supervised 480 complete transactions, represent more than 160 billion in transaction value. So just giving a little bit of background about him, just kind of where he's getting up to from there. I want to kick this off to Tyrus just to talk about a little bit about, because people see Robert F. Smith now and they'll be like, my man got money and he's a billionaire and he's paying off classes and all this other stuff. But I want Tyrus to talk a little bit about the background. And this kind of goes into making that system sexy, right? Like there were steps that he had to take for him to be able to get to that. So Tyrus, can you talk to us a little bit about like kind of where he comes from? How did he get to where where he is right now? And what did that process look like for him?
So, of course, he was born in Denver, Colorado. He grew up in a predominantly Black neighborhood, middle class, and his parents were school teachers. And so at that point, hold up, got some noise coming in.
Got that business booming.
At this point, he applied in high school. So when we're thinking about building the foundation and the blocks, where do you want to go? In high school, he applied for an internship at Bell Labs, but he was told that the program was for college students. So that's that first roadblock. In your business, you will come across roadblocks. And he kept calling every Monday for 5 months. Persistence. When a student from MIT didn't show up, he got the position. He developed a reliability test for semiconductors. And so he later went on to earn a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering. And then he got an MBA for Columbia University with concentrations in finance and marketing. Did not go into venture capitalism at this point. He worked at Goodyear Tire Rubber, Air Products and Chemicals, and later at Kraft General Foods as a chemical engineer. So he was building, and when we think about framework systems and processes, this is what he excelled in. And I think last week we talked about, if it wasn't last week, it was the week before, what skill set do you have and how do you apply that to your business? So as an engineer, the skill set of systems, processes, frameworks, consistency, persistence rolled into when he started to work at Goldman Sachs in technology investment banking. And then he worked in New York and Silicon Valley. He advised on mergers and acquisition with companies like Microsoft. And then he also worked he was included in Vanity Fair's new establishment list, which is an annual ranking of individuals who have made an impactful or who made impactful business innovations. So Robert Smith went from a chemical engineer begging to get into a program, consistently working up, learning the process, working in the background of the companies. I think sometimes, Corey, people want to jump out and do stuff. People want to jump out and their business be booming. People want to jump into this new entrepreneur endeavor and be great. However, there are building blocks. And as he went through each one of those steps of working for other companies in the background, you can see him shift from engineering to now I'm doing patents. Now I'm working on acquisition and mergers. Now I'm handling finances. And that's where the birth of Vista Equity Partners came from, after he went through all of those stages. So we're talking about from 1985 to 2000. 1985 to the year 2000 when he founded Vista Equity Partners. So a question that I have for you guys, and I want to kick it over to you, Aisha, because you've been in the military over almost 17, 18 years. How do you trust the process over such a long period of time to get to that final destination? Because it's a vision that he wanted to do this private equity, but he spent from the year 85 to the year 2000 building up forward.
Well, I think it's based on you have to have a plan, because what happens a lot, like even for the military, there's most companies already have a system created. Most of them have a system created. They already know, the average, length of time somebody stays in a department, or how to manage this, how to manage that. And you're someone that ends up in the system, and pretty much some people get lost in the system. They don't take time. And I think what I want to say Robert F. Smith. The thing that Robert F. Smith, I think, was really able to do, he was able to not allow the system to work him. He worked the system. And I think for a lot of business owners that are trying to level up, or entrepreneurs, and again, entrepreneurs are those that are trying to level up within their organization. If you find yourself getting lost in the system, your transition, or you getting to whatever level that you want to get to, might take a lot longer. Of course, there's some people who are able to navigate it and it just happens, but you have to be aware of the system and ask yourself, how do I make the system work for me? And then utilize that in order for you to get to the intended goal. Because yes, he went to Cornell, had a great background. I love his story of how, he grew up with, and during when desegregation there was a big transition with desegregation. He was a young child, I think even a baby, when Martin Luther King delivered his "I Have a Dream" speech. And he remembered, his family, just doing so many things during a time where they didn't have, all the rights that they're supposed to have. And he was able to elevate himself to be, again, the first Black billionaire. But again, are you going into whatever you're doing that might have a system created, and you're like, let me work the system rather than have the system work for me? And being a career advisor and seeing how the system work people, and now they're transitioning out. They don't have a plan. They don't know what to do. They're panicked. And then they have to settle for a job or for a position that they're not happy with. And then when I go into some of these agencies and I see these disgruntled civilians, come to find out they were prior military, and they're just unhappy because of how things pivoted for them. So I think we can learn a great lesson for entrepreneurs, business owners, entrepreneurs. Are you looking at the system? And although it's built by someone else, created by someone else, how are you using the system to get to your intended goal? And then also taking calculated risks. Because again, I mean, he was in high school going after a college student position. That's like a calculated risk, right? But he kept at it. And then when the opportunity was there, he was prepared to jump into it. So that's the other part. When that door does open, where there's a little crack in the door, are you prepared to jump in there and get at it? So again, it's about not letting the system work you, being prepared. So when you go into that space, they're like, you know what? I know you're in high school, but you are kicking butt in this position. So it's those two things, and being really strategic to know where you want to go and work the system effectively.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things, and I don't want to get off the part about him continuously calling from like high school trying to get this internship. Like it's a risk, but that tells me he had like zero self-limiting beliefs inside of him. And a lot of times, and I want y'all to really think about this when you're opening your business, like if you're even inside a business and you're working for an organization, or even if you're thinking about, you know what, one day I want to own my own company, or I want to have my own business, like your self-limiting beliefs, to be honest with you, they're going to haunt you. And if you don't have that together, like if you haven't gotten that out in the forefront and put it all out on the table and say, what do I think I can and can't do? Like, obviously he thought, look, I'm in high school, I can go get that job. Like, I'm in high school and I can probably hang with the big dogs. That's at this internship. Because when I look at his resume of what he went through, a lot of that's Ivy League stuff. And for him to take the place of someone who's coming from MIT, you got to be a bad man to fill in for somebody like that. To be honest with you, I probably would have been thinking to myself, like, MIT people apply for this? Oh, yeah, it's probably not for me. But, you know, as you tap into your mind, and if you ask me today, then yeah, I probably could do it just right with an MIT associate or MIT graduate, because I know that the only reason that you may be doing better at this is probably just because you've been doing it longer than I have been. There's nothing that I can't do just in the same amount of time that probably will be better. And I carry that with myself, like throughout everything that I do. And it's not to say that I'm trying to be the best and knock everyone else down. It's trying to say, well, if I'm going to be number one, I'm going to make it hard for you to be number one. But you should also make it hard for me to be number one. And something that I was reading here is like a lot of people say, well, he's the richest black man in the world. But I'm reading something that says that he's actually number two, because there's a Nigerian oil guy, Aliko, and I'm about to butcher the last name, Dangote, who's worth 10 billion. You know, Robert F. Smith is worth 5.2. And so it's like there's somebody that's still better, but at the same time, in his mind, he could be using that as saying, well, I'm about to pass you up. Like, I'm good. Like, and then the other guy's probably saying, well, it's just going to be hard for you to pass me up because I got the oil behind me. Like, I got these other businesses behind me and whatnot. But I want to pivot, because as we know who he is, and he kind of blew up in, I guess, the limelight, you can say, because no one was really talking about him before that. So he gives this commencement speech and he says, you know what? I'm paying for everybody's tuition. But he got backlash over that. And so, Aisha, I'm going to kick it off to you first, because you talked about earlier about how your words can be misconstrued. And then sometimes your words and what you say can actually cause you to be scrutinized a little bit. So can you talk to us about what happened with him wanting to pay off the tuition, and then they come back and say, you know what, there's some tax issues with this. Can you talk about that for a bit?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big deal. I believe he had got like an honorary doctorate. And, in his speech, he's just like, listen, I'm challenging alumni. I want to, offer this grant to pay off the 2019, like the entire class of 2019's debt. I mean, this is huge, especially, he was on the ground of a HBCU, of course, with the financial differences and the pay gaps, especially within the African-American community. That's huge. I mean, student loan debt is something that everybody's even talking about now, because you're hearing that there's potentially debt that's going to be forgiven. Like, that is a big deal. So gifting that to these African-American students was a huge deal. And what happened later is, there were some tax things that he was dealing with that also had a connection to basically the same funds that pretty much funded that payment of those tuition. So it was because initially, even when you look at that tax issue that happened, it was something that started from his 30s. So there was like a $1 billion investment. And it was all tied to somebody who first invested in him pivoting and starting this new company. And they wanted to have a certain level of control over it. And based off of that, there was just some financial things that were overstepped or that might have been missed. And unfortunately, it also got tied up. Him funding this HBCU and this class and funding their tuition got caught up on all that. And it was all linked from even the beginning stages of him starting his company. So it's unfortunate because we don't know like the full background story. Yes, we're getting bits and pieces, but if you think about somebody that is it a billionaire status, are they managing their own finances? Most likely they're not. Could he have been aware of it? Possibly. But, I think that we see these tax issues happening with a lot of people. This is a normal thing. And it's not saying that it's a good thing to see that's normal. But I think for a lot of business owners and a lot of people out there that are managing a business and you do get to these higher levels, one of the things you want to make sure is that when you do hire these finance individuals, that they are managing your money effectively, that you're doing your effective checks and balances. And if you are going to fund, again, who knows what he could have done differently? Because again, when you hire people to manage your money, you trust that, listen, when I'm going to go out here and I want to tell these students that I want to fund their tuition. Are we good to go with this money? Are we good to go with this funding? If they say yes, if you think about it, he's been doing this for a long time, probably working with these same individuals, and he never ran into tax issues before. And now come to find out, you have to issue out millions of dollars now because it wasn't being managed effectively. So when I go to my money person and I say, hey, I want to do this. Can we do it? And they give me the green light. Sometimes my assumption is we're good to go. So, without knowing all the details of what happens in the background, I think, again, it's a big lesson on we need to make sure as business owners that we're doing our checks and balances to make sure that our taxes are paid off. And then if these are things are dealing with offshore accounts, or if this is monies that are dealing with other people, that those that we're in partnership or those that we are maybe refunding or we're that are connected in partnership with this level of money that we're managing, that we also are doing our checks and balances to ensure that it's right. Because when you are, when you're dealing with billions of dollars and it's tied up with other people, you really want to make sure that's right. But again, someone at that level, at that status, probably hired someone. I think something probably was overlooked. And because of that, it unfortunately tainted this great deed that he did. So for me, I don't think it takes away from what he did. I think he has been doing philanthropy for years. His family was given, his father worked for the NAACP. He talked about how his mother used to send a check to the United Negro College Fund. Philanthropy is something he's been doing for a long time. So this is something in the heart of hearts. He truly believes in building his own community. So I believe the intention was right, but the money was funny. And I think it had a lot to do with who was managing his money.
So before I jump into this, because I got a lot of pieces to add to that puzzle, I want to remind you guys that tomorrow we're having our emotional intelligence workshop from 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern time. It is not too late to register. Reminder, jump in. You will get great information on emotional intelligence. Aisha, give us a 1-minute blurb on what they're going to learn in this workshop.
Listen, Linda, listen. And actually it's from 2 to 4 Eastern, 2 to 4 Eastern. No worries. But just so you know, you guys want to definitely be a part of this. Even the military has recognized they want to add this as a leadership competency, emotional intelligence. And what it is recognizing, understanding, and managing your emotions. And you might be like, what? I don't need to know about emotions. But in reality, multiple studies have shown that emotional intelligence has a big factor in revenue, It has a big factor in retention. One study showed that employees were 4 times more likely to stay at an organization with a leader that had higher EQ. In addition, if you're implementing and understanding how to use EQ, emotional intelligence, or EI, and building client relationships, and also especially during this time right now with everything going on in the nation with COVID and with the weather and people losing power and so on, emotional intelligence and people knowing and feeling that you care and you support them and all the different facets of emotional intelligence is so important that you master that now. So we want you to come and join us, Ackley Consulting /emotional intelligence. And what you're going to get is the tools and strategies to understand your own level of EI. So you can understand your level of emotional intelligence, understand how it benefits you if you want to add it to your coaching and training program, and also how it benefits the psychology of business communication, the psychology of connecting and building those client relationships. So, again, emotions has been something that has been tainted. People think it's a bad word. I just did a training with my organization yesterday, and I said, you are emotional. And a lot of them had all these negative connotations connected to it. But in reality, we all are emotional. It's just learning how to master our emotions to allow it, again, just like systems, right? You need to make the system work for you, but now you need to make your emotions work for you so you can have the best output. So join us tomorrow, and we are looking forward to having you. It's at a great rate, by the way, a great rate.
Oh, perfect. And so jumping back into one again, Robert S. Smith has been in philanthropy a long time. He has been paying it forward. And I believe that once you get to a certain level, the philanthropy kind of starts to ooze out. It's like, okay, I have all of this money. What do I do with it? How do I give back? How do I add value? And so he's been doing that. I mean, in 2015, he sponsored the college education of all the returned Boko Haram girls, the young girls who were kidnapped by Boko Haram. He has paid, and in the Morehouse thing, he paid their student loans. The gift total was $34 million. And so we're not talking about, he paid $1 million, he gave a couple 100,000. 34 million was his total gift to that, to wipe out the student loan debt, because he wanted to, like Aisha said, challenge other billionaires, other wealthy individuals, and say, hey, look, let's stop talking about the issue and let's do something about it, and I'll give it a start. And now for his tax evasion, that thing goes deep. He is accused of avoiding paying taxes for 15 years. He evaded it by using foreign trusts, corporations, and bank accounts. Now, he avoided prosecution by cooperating in a case against Robert Brocken, a Houston businessman accused of using a web of Caribbean entities to hide $2 billion in income. And now, since Robert Smith signed a non-prosecution agreement, he is out of that trouble of prosecution criminally, but he did agree to pay more than $139 million in back taxes. So as business owners, what's the principle? What's the lesson? Like Aisha said, make sure that you own your numbers. Even though you hire professionals to handle certain things, you hire the CPA, you hire the attorney, you still have to make sure that there are checks and balances. Maybe run that information by a different person. Maybe have 2 different accountants. If once you get to a certain level, I start hearing people talk about having multiple accountants, multiple financial advisors, multiple attorneys. And the purpose of that is doing checks and balances. And you might say, well, I'm not there yet. Most of these CPAs will do you a quick review of your previous filing because they're looking for your business, and they'll do that for free. So you can always have your paperwork done and then go look at another accountant and say, hey, look, I might be looking to transition from where I'm at now. Can you do a review of what I have from the past? And then maybe we could work together. And I guarantee you most of them be like, yeah, let me do that, because they're looking to get your business. So there are ways that you can go and make sure that your I's are dotted, your T's are crossed, and that you're not falling into the trap. Because not paying taxes, not only in a malicious way, it also happens to a lot of small business owners that just don't know how to navigate the system. So they don't have an accountant. They don't have an attorney. They're trying to do not QuickBooks. They're trying to do what's that tax? The tax prep you do
about TurboTax.
Yeah, TurboTax. Let me go on TurboTax and do my taxes. That's okay when you're an individual. When you have an entity, and especially if you have payroll, you have to make sure that these things are being done right. And TurboTax might not get you there. And then you get this letter from the IRS saying you owe 10 grand plus all these penalties. You don't know where to go with that. So this may not be sexy, like Corey said, but these are the building blocks of business. You need to have your team members in place in the beginning, your attorney, your CPA, somebody to double check that information. And then as a business owner, you don't have to be an expert, but you need some level of awareness in finance. Because how are you going to manage the money? How are you going to manage the business? How are you going to scale and grow if you don't have that level? And so for Robert, billions of dollars, 10,000 people looking over all of his stuff. He's probably not in the day-to-day. It went unnoticed. He may or may not have known. It may have been I was able to hide away a couple of billion and then I can throw 139 million if you caught me. So be it. But as an individual, as a small business, if you got hit, and I've seen it, I'm telling you, I've seen it in taxes, and in real estate, I've seen it with construction fines where they don't get permits. When the city drop you a $20,000 fine, can you pay that out of pocket? I can't.
Nah, and so something that, to be honest with you, I ain't trying to pay $20,000 just out the gate for something like that. But something that I want to go back to though was he said how deep his philanthropy went, and he said my dad used to, and he had a quote. And he said, my dad made sure that everybody that looked like us had a YMCA that they could go to. And so something that, to be honest with you, when I talk to people who want to get into business, when I talk to people who say, because I run into a lot of people that say money isn't everything. And I'm like, but money is going to allow you to do what you need to do. And so we get into conversations about people who say, okay, so what's your dream? What do you want to do? What's the impact that you want to have? And a lot of people have these impacts that are, well, I want to change lives. I want to help people do this. I want to help other people open businesses. I want to send people to school. I want to travel the world. I want to, be worldwide. You need money to do it. And so I think Robert F. Smith teaches us that principle because we need more millionaires. We need more billionaires, but we need the right ones because there's a lot of people who look, I'm gonna just be honest with y'all. There's a lot of people who are sweet in business, and I'm like, money wise, and I'm like, how? This don't make no sense because they're not pouring back into anybody else. They're just like, I have all these millions of dollars and forget all of y'all after that. Not saying that I should tell them what to do with that money, but at the same time, are you pouring back into something to try to help other people reach the status that you're in? And so Robert F. Smith said, I was looking at 400 students 400 years after 1619, and he said they were burdened. But he said, if I could liberate them, that was the right thing to do for me. And so the thing was, and I think this was the best part, he said, I didn't even think it was that big of a deal. So that tells you that he was doing something that was like, you know what? I need to do these for these people. I need to take the burden off their back. And he wasn't doing it in the age that we live in for clout. He wasn't like, man, when I drop that, I'm gonna be all in the headlines. Whether he was or he wasn't, he said that he didn't. And so what that does is it sets the precedence for even them, right? Like there's something I was talking about, your coaching tree. In this case, he ain't coaching them, but in this case, like he's spreading the wealth, right? So those people then say, you know what, my college tuition was paid for. Even if it takes out of those 410 people to say, you know what, I'm going to build myself to a level to where I can pay other college tuition. And it just continues to snowball downhill. And all of a sudden you have this giving. And so that's something that I really respect about him was people look at the money. And you talked about this earlier, Tyrus, and you said he had dropped what it was like $30-something million.
34.
He dropped. They said it was going to cost him about $40 million for him to pay off all those student loans. But the thing for me was, how far ahead do you put people by doing that? Because if you can graduate college with no student loan debt and whatnot, you can get houses quicker. You can get assets quicker, as long as you're going into the actual asset market. You're not like, hey, no student loans, Lamborghini. Let's not do that. Yeah, let's not. Or your base model BMW that you buy. Let's not get into that. However, when you pour into people like this, you then see everything around you start to grow. And so that's something for him, is that it really made me start to think about it. And I didn't even think about the Boca Raton thing you were talking about.
Lord, Corey just made up something.
What's it called?
Which is a location.
Boca Raton.
What's the name of it? What's the name of it?
Boko Haram.
Boko Haram. There you
went
go.
on vacation right there.
It's a Boca Raton, y'all. But what is that, in Florida? Something like that?
I don't know what that said.
I don't know what's that, but I heard the name before.
Connected to the story though.
So but even still, for them, when he pays off their education, and he, like, those people then say, okay, I'm in a position to win now, and hopefully they take it and bring it to the next level. Like, but those people from Morehouse, they're gonna look at the next group and say, well, how can I give back? They're gonna look at the people around them and say, how can I give back? How can I build my own life to a level that will then raise everything up around me? And a lot of people want to do this, and so people say, well, no, I don't really want money. I don't really care about money. Yeah, you should care about it, because the goal that you're trying to give, the thing that you're trying to succeed in right now, it takes money to do that. And so I didn't even want to skip past that on, like, the magnitude of how it changes the landscape of a lot of people, and even years down the line, simply by making that payment. Like, we need more millionaires in the world to do stuff like that. And it doesn't even have to be paying for school. It could be gifting somebody a house. Like, imagine if you didn't have to pay a mortgage. Like, how far along in life could you be? Because realistically, we have to understand, especially with minorities are trying to battle back from oppression of where they came from. If you want to go specifically into African Americans, like, let's not talk about how, 60 years ago that we couldn't even go into the same areas, right? Like, all these movies been coming out lately that just goes to show you that it ain't been that long since the last time that you couldn't drink out the water fountain, that you got a denial letter because of the color of your skin, or they say, well, your kind is not accepted in this school or in this practice or whatnot. So it launches people forward. It launches, the community forward.
I want to jump in and add just some business principles from what you're saying, some things that entrepreneurs and even business leaders can take from what you said. One, about the money. Les Brown said, they say money can't make you happy, but everybody want to find out for themselves. You need money in order to do everything that you want to do, to live, to give back, to add value. And here's the principle behind being a philanthropic business leader. It builds connections, networking. That's the lifeblood. They say cash is the lifeblood of your business, but really it's networking, because the more people that you can get around, the more people that are willing to invest with you, to work with you, to help you, to pass along your business information, to bring new customers and clients to you, the more you grow, the more you're seen. And so, for just like if he donated $34 million to Morehouse, somebody saw that. Somebody reached out to him and said, hey, how can I partner with you to do something else in another area? What does that look like? How can we do business together? When you add tremendous value like that to other organizations, that gets returned to you. So you may be thinking as a business owner, well, I don't want to go and donate all my business funds or my money out. That's a scarcity mindset, because once you do that, it will return to you. Like Corey said, those kids or those students, those young men and women that graduated, that had their tuition paid off, some of them are going to be looking back and saying, hey, this guy made an impact in my life. How can I make an impact in somebody else's life? And how can I catch up with him? How can I do the same thing? How can I fund something else? And so when you're thinking about it as a business owner, you can be very strategic about your donations. You don't have to just go give money everywhere. You can plan it and be very strategic about this. And so, Aisha, I see you putting a couple of things in there. Go ahead and jump in and let us know what your thoughts are on investing in the community and that loyalty that it can bring.
Yeah, I was looking up some stuff from Kamala Harris, and way before she was even in the Senate, and she talked about this specifically because as you were talking, it's like, as business leaders, yes, we're talking about the importance of supporting a population of individuals who, again, there's a major, just a financial gap, and being able to, I love that aspect of liberating them. They don't have to worry about being in debt. This is supporting these HBCUs that, okay, they're getting their, their funding or getting their bills paid, early on, or getting things paid, and it's supporting them as well, because a lot of HBCUs have been dealing with funding issues. Like, there's so many layers to what he did and the trickle down effect that he has created for these individuals, but also Kamala Harris, and even this example, when you are a business owner and you're in the community, invest in the same community that where your customers and your clients live. If you're investing and you're supporting and you're showing up in, at the YMCA, and you're showing up and you're supporting the local church, and you're showing up and you're supporting, I don't know, maybe they're having like a day for the community, and you're there and you're offering your services, this is going to build another level of support and connection with the community that is really going to help your business boom. And again, it's not all about the financials, but again, it's a great relationship builder. And also think about the employees and the team members that work for you. How many people probably went around and bragged and say, you know what, I work for him. Yeah, I'm the administrative assistant, but listen, I work under Robert F. Smith. He went out and yes, girl, I saw him when he walked in. I could just imagine the conversations. So just imagine the employee loyalty that's happening because they are seeing that their leader, the CEO, is creating a culture where, causes and philanthropy and supporting individuals is something they're all about. You have a sense of pride for the organization and the company that you're working for. So I love the term of being a philanthropic leader. There's so much beauty in that because, again, it's the gift that keeps on giving. So as a business owner, as a business leader, even someone within, again, an entrepreneur, what are you doing to your, again, community building might be internally for an entrepreneur. What are you doing to connect and build relationships with other people? What are you doing to pour into your community so they can see that you're truly about a cause and you're supporting that same community that is basically kind of supporting that organization and the business that you are in? It's so important that we think about that. So I love that he has truly created, this lifestyle or this idea, and has challenged a lot of individuals to give back because, again, it is the gift that keeps on giving. I had never heard of this man until he did that deed. Now I'm watching videos. Now we're talking about him today. Now I didn't even know his company existed. It's just the gift that keeps on giving. So just imagine how by you embedding a cause, being more of a philanthropic leader, being someone that truly gives back to the community, what that could do for you. So really think about embedding that and really starting to create a culture of giving back because, again, it is the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, and you talk about like employee loyalty. I remember meeting this guy from South Carolina. He said they had some weather related issues going on up there in South Carolina. And he said, man, to be honest with you, Corey, I was thinking about going to another job. They were offering me about $20,000 more. And he said, man, that would have done wonders for my family. And so he was like a store manager or something like that. And he said during the weather related issues, he said once everything died down, he said he worked for small business and catch this, small business owners that don't have, 1,000+ people working there. He said the owner of the company, which he knew, but they weren't like super cool like that, but he knew him. He said he showed up to my house. He had heard about how some pipe busted or like something happened with the floor. And he said he showed up $1,500. He said, that's the amount that I needed to get this fixed. And he said, here, I appreciate your work. I just want to give back to you because I know this may put you in a bind. Like $1,500 is not a lot of money, but it could put you on a better scale for you not to have to worry about this right now or have to dig into your savings or your investments or whatnot. And he said, I was sold after that. He said, I'm not going anywhere. I don't care if you're going to pay me $20,000 after that. You got me for life. And he said, I'm going to retire here. And there's no amount of money that can pull me from here. He said, to be honest with you, the only way that I leave this job if somebody offers me $1 million a year. And he said, I know that's not happening, not for what I do. And so he said, I'm here, but that $1,500, but he wasn't even stuck on the $1,500. He was stuck on the fact that the owner showed up to his house to say, I understand your issue. I'm trying to remedy the issue for you. I care. I'm here for you. Like, let's get this done together. And now you got an employee for life. And this person was a member of management. So now you don't lose. Like, think about the trickle down effect. You don't lose your manager. That manager then says, you know what? I'm bought into the company for real now. Not to say that he wasn't before. And then that trickles down to the line level associates. And then the line level associates start saying, you know what? This company is pretty dope. Like, they take care of their people here. And so when you said that, it just reminded me of that. But I guess as we wrap up, because we got only a couple minutes left, I'm gonna start with you, Tyra. So what are some takeaways from us researching Robert F. Smith, like from us kind of diving down into his backstory, what he does? Like, what are some of the takeaways that you had for it?
Man, you must read my mind, because I was thinking of the key points that I wanted to highlight from him, and also from some other podcasts that we listened to. My first takeaway was his beginning. He was ambitious, persistent, and prepared. So he wanted that internship. To call every Monday for 5 months straight shows a level of persistence. And oftentimes business owners get into business and they're not persistent. They don't want to make the phone calls. They don't want to get the hangups. They don't want to hear the objections. And then they get deflated and end up going out of business. You have to be consistent and persistent in your pursuits of your goal, your dream. So that's number one. As a high school student, he was competing with college students, and he knew it. This isn't for you. This is for this level. You're not ready. But he didn't take no for an answer, and he got the opportunity. And when he got the opportunity, he was prepared and made the best of it. I've seen a lot of times people get opportunity and they squander it and they blow it because they're not ready. They're not patient. They haven't built or bought into developing themselves in the process. That's number one takeaway. The number two takeaway that I took from this, especially him being a Black individual, a billionaire, and I was listening to Earn Your Leisure on the Breakfast Club recently, and they were talking about how we celebrate in the Black community our rappers, our athletes. Those are the people that get who we know. Yet we don't know our billionaires or our multimillionaire Black individuals who came up a different way, who went into a different industry, not entertainment, not sports. And so, like Aisha said, not knowing who this man is does a disservice to our community as a whole, because the only gateway and path that we see out of the hood or out of the lower end of the projects or even out of the lower middle class is, well, how can I be an athlete, or how can I be a rapper or an entertainer or even an actor? How can I be that? But we need to start teaching our kids, you can be a venture capitalist. You can work in finance. You can be an entrepreneur. You can be X, Y, and Z that's not related to entertainment. And so we have to start changing the narrative. And I believe that my takeaway 3 with his philanthropy, he's changing the narrative of, look at who I am, what I have become, and what I'm able to give back. And you can do the same. Not to puff himself up, but it's an example, because we know that, okay, and I hear it all the time. Well, when we have these issues in the community, where are the rappers at? Where are the Jay-Z's? And I know they donate, but when you hear where are the certain people, that's the names that you hear. You don't ever hear about where are the Robert F. Smiths? Where are the Oprah Winfrey's? Where are the Tyler Perry's? And they're in entertainment, but where are these other individuals? Like, I've been watching several podcasts that highlight Black entrepreneurs that are multi-millionaires that have nothing to do with entertainment or sports at all. And we don't even know they exist. So that's my other takeaway is to begin to show that you can do something else, not sports or entertainment related. And then the last takeaway, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, make sure that you know your numbers and that you have your thumb on the pulse of your business at all times. That way you won't get wrapped up into tax evasion, or even whether it's malicious or not, mistakes that are made in business because you're just hustling and grinding and you're not being a true business owner or leader.
Yeah, I mean, even with what you were saying, where were the successful businesses within that community when all this was happening? Because there is a nice big tower. I mean, if you go into the city, you always see those big buildings. Where were those people? So I know a lot of times, it is easy to call out celebrities and athletes, but there are people within the community that are very successful that, again, when we think about small businesses, there's a big range. We say small businesses, but there are people making really great amounts of money, but they're labeled a small business owner. So also think about that within your community. There are successful people. So we should be calling them out and asking them, hey, what are they doing to support the community? And again, it's not that they're not. But if that's not your mindset, if you're starting if you're a grassroots business and you're starting and you're a founder and you're just beginning, think about how, as you build your business, how can you create a culture that's similar to this? So as you are progressing and growing, you're starting to do little things to support causes. And now, again, that philanthropy is something that is embedded in what you do. But in regards to other lessons learned is, again, we're talking to entrepreneurs. Maybe you're someone in the organization and you're a leader and you're trying to level up. Again, a high schooler going into a position that a college student that was written for a college student. So again, when the opportunity opens up, again, I'm someone that I remember being in a position that was for a master sergeant and I was a tech sergeant. Or I wasn't even a tech sergeant. I was a staff about to put on tech. So that's an E5 about to put on E6. But the position was written for an E7. And I remember going into it and being so nervous. But what made me different is I prepared for it. I really worked hard and grinded. So when I was placed in the position, although it was written for someone that was a senior, considered a senior leader, I was prepared for it. I had done the work ahead of time. I positioned myself, used the system effectively so I can make sure that my resume and my experience was effective. And even now that I'm going into a EA position, shout out, y'all, I'm getting officially promoted 1 April. We gonna celebrate. But even before I pivoted into this EA position, I recognized that I had to position myself and get myself prepared for these opportunities. So when we had a gap of time where we didn't have a E8 and someone in that superintendent role, I was putting the work in. So when the door opened, they're like, listen, we need an interim superintendent while we're hiring someone. And guess who was chosen? And again, I don't say it to brag, but I was able to really start looking at the system and making sure that it worked for me. So you want to be a visionary as early as possible. You want to think about, okay, I know that these positions say this, but what kind of skills, what kind of opportunities can I place myself in where I can learn and have the skills and abilities. So when the door does open, I can say, hey, I know the package says you have to be this rank or you have to be this or you have to have this, but I'm going to tell you, I have the skills, I have the abilities, I have the experience. So if you put me in here, I am going to show you how effective I am. So you have to stay ready. And again, when we're looking at, as we're building our brands or building our businesses, you want to, again, start creating that culture early. You don't have to wait until later on to start really saying, I want to give back. You don't have to wait till later on to start saying, okay, I'm going to be, start taking strategic risks. Just, again, map out that plan. A lot of things that we do, please connect with us because we talk a lot of things about, reverse engineering, strategic planning, really being effective in creating these systems, these life operating systems, so you can really level up as a business owner or as an entrepreneur or as a leader of an organization. So connect with us on that because, again, there is a strategy to this. And if you don't know it, get with the people that's going to help you strategize effectively so you can get to that level that you're trying to attain.
Yeah. And so for me, I think the biggest thing is, and just to give y'all 3 points to it, was the first one was Howard. She kind of hit on it a little bit, was you got to be persistent in everything that you do. And that's something that I just posted in the entrepreneurship execution and growth group. For those of y'all who join that group, there's a lot of free knowledge going on in there on Facebook, but it talked about negotiations, and the person that was like kind of warm and fuzzy and the person that was very direct. And it talked about the outcomes of that. And so I could imagine as Robert F. Smith is trying to get that internship, he's not like, hey, do you think I could be a part of that? He probably was like, no, when can I start? Like, I'm ready to go. What's the date that I can come in? Like those type of things to really implant in the person's mind, like, this is where I'm trying to go. And to be honest with you, a lot of people in life, they go about just like, does it sound good? Possibly could it happen? No, tell people what you want. Because I believe if you're the only person that knows where you want to go, then that's a problem. The other part is be a humble giver. I mean, we just outlined here, he was giving people's net worth away. Like not a check, because I know sometimes people be like, man, I just spent the whole check on this, right? Or I just spent somebody's salary on whatever. He spent someone's net worth that's at the top of the mountain to help other people. And we never heard about it until the second time he decided to do it, which really, to be honest, in my opinion, the only reason we knew about it was because of Morehouse and whatnot. So and I keep up with HBCUs. So if you didn't keep up with HBCUs, you might not even heard about it. The third part, understand, and I think we can take this principle from Robert F. Smith. Matter of fact, let me be direct. I know we can. You don't have to be in the limelight to win. And so we talked about this before. No one knew what his company was. When we figured out who Robert F. Smith was, everybody was Googling. So what does he do? And then we realized he was in tech and he was in investments and all this other stuff. You don't have to be in the limelight. And so we live in this age of social media where everybody's like, I gotta be the person. I gotta be the man or the woman that is in the front of everybody at all times. Man, you talking about somebody who amassed $5.2 billion. And relatively, we didn't even know who this person was until they decided by giving to put themselves in the limelight. And he didn't even think anything about it. So those are my three things. So as we wrap it up, Tyrus, it looks like Aisha dropped off on us. Is there anything you got before we wrap it up?
That's it, man. I'm telling you, as a community and as just business owners in general, understand that there are more industries out there than what you think. And then figure out, how do you network with those people that are in the industry? And my last point, and then I'll let you close it out, Corey. The last point is, don't allow peer pressure or somebody else's dream to pivot you from what you might desire. Like you said, like you mentioned your brother. Growing up, people picked at your brother because of the tech. He wanted to, play games and talk about computers, and he was bullied for that. But that was his dream. And how many people do you think have dreams and business ideas and goals, and somebody was like, oh, you can't do that. Oh, you can't be that. Oh, you shouldn't do that, or whatever. So that's my last thing as a entrepreneur, as a business owner, as a dreamer. Don't allow anybody to pivot you away from what you want to do because of what they think that you can't or cannot do.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's, and just to go off of what you just said, was you have to squash the voice inside of yourself. Like you really have to squash the things that internally tell you that you can't, because I'm pretty sure people told, Robert F. Smith, technology is not where it's at. Especially, and just to be honest, being a black man, you should go be an athlete. What about playing basketball? What about playing football? What about doing these, typical things that will get you to a millionaire status? But to be honest with you, I mean, the more that I dove down into business, I wish somebody would have taught me this early on, because I was giving my body up for money, or I should say for the idea of money.
That didn't even sound right.
They're going to cherry pick that though. Yeah. So what I mean is, I'm playing football, I'm working out, I'm bashing myself up against somebody else.
Okay.
I'm training, right? Like my shoulders are probably 70 years old right now. My neck getting jarred all over the place. I could become paralyzed for the idea that one day I might be a millionaire.
Yeah. I like it. Because when you say you was giving your body up, I'm like, Corey was selling his body.
Let me tell y'all what I used to do back in the day. I'm just kidding. But that's what I mean. But it happens to a lot of people. They just say, well, go play sports. And now that was going to come out bad too, degrading yourself. Now you're putting yourself physically in harm's way to say that potentially one day I'm in the elite of the elite for me to become this millionaire potentially and take care of my family. When in reality, there's so many different ways, so many avenues, so many industries that you can do it on. And realistically, I'm gonna just say it now, Tyrus, being an athlete, that ain't even the best route to go to become a millionaire. It might be fast, but you're gonna pay for it at the end of the day. When in reality, you could be kicking back, because your brain's not going to kill itself because it's thought too much, like because you think too much. You'll be fine thinking and using a little bit of brain power. If anything, you'll untap more brain power to use. So that's all I got. Aisha, you still with us?
You're on mute.
Yeah, you're on mute.
She good to go, Corey.
Yeah, she good to go. Well, I'm gonna take us out. This has been another edition of the Launch, Leverage, and Lead podcast. And y'all know how we do, man. You got to mix action with leadership. I hope that you take the principles away, and we'll see you tomorrow for the emotional intelligence workshop. What's that? 2 to 4 p.m. we said Eastern Standard Time. But if anything else, man, y'all know what our great mentor, Master P, says. You got to be bout it.
You got to be bout it.
Mm-hmm.